right. Welcome once again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are listening to this. We welcome you back to the Unpopular Black Gamer Strange Trek, where we talk about things crazy, unusual, and strange within Star Trek. Like always, I am accompanied by my good friend Patrick. Say hello, sir.
Hello, I am here. I was just about to take a sip right when I realized I was being introduced.
That could have turned out terrible. Uh,
Yeah, I was like, one
introduce
second.
introduce yourself, Patrick. Yeah.
It's like, excuse me, sorry, y'all.
We are back once again with another episode. Last week was probably one of my more favorite conversations that we've had, where we talked about just useless characters in Star Trek. And we also stated last week that we had a good range of topics for this month that we're going to talk about. First, starting off with stuff that's more lighthearted and just funny for us to talk about. But later on in the month, we will point out that the conversations could get heavier. We're wanted to focus in that direction of not pretty much not holding off on the topics that we found that like, oh, this could be pretty heavy, and we probably shouldn't talk about it this soon or at this point. But we're wanting to go into that now and discuss some of those topics. So stay
hmm
tuned for those additional topics that we have coming up. But today, since how
We'll
last
still be
week,
cracking jokes,
oh, most
but
most
they'll just
definitely.
be much more inappropriate.
And we'll probably have to watch what we say more because it
We
could be misconstrued. Uh,
right. We got a future edit that out comments along the way.
but last week we talked about the most useless Star Trek character, and we were basically focusing on characters that we felt like had more potential to be in either future episodes or in the episode that they were in, be utilized differently or stronger in a stronger way, or just some pointing out probably one or two of the characters were just pretty much just a-holes and just I don't know why they didn't just change their character or had their character evolve. uh,
hmm
so we decided that this week we're going to focus on the most useless antagonist in Star Trek. And I have to, like what I did last week, pretty much define the definition of this. So basically, a character that was used that not used properly. It You could see that they could be a great antagonist or an antagonist that could like foil Starfleet multiple times throughout the series and also possibly jump into other series as well. But for some reason or another, the writers either forgot about them, uh, wrote them crazy to where it's like, oh, they could have been, but like now they're just some run of the mill throwaway antagonist. Or just like, heck, didn't know exactly what to do with the character, so they just edited it and then just like, yep, that's it. We're done. We're not using that character anymore.
Well, I'll act like this never happened, even though it's canon. We're just gonna act like it never happened.
And I found that there were a few characters like that. The funny thing is, I saw most of these when we were doing our research. Most of these came from like Voyager or
Not
uh,
surprised.
or the series that we try not to name on this channel.
Say his name.
No, no,
Say
we're
his
no,
name.
no, 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 no,
Say Picard.
no. Darn it, Patrick! I always tell you not to say it, but you still say it. Look,
I'm always gonna say it. We all watched that show.
seasons 1 and 2 didn't happen. Okay, it didn't happen. Season 3 was an additional season of TNG. Okay.
It really was. And
this is
it was awesome.
this is what I'm going with. All right.
Yep.
So, without further ado, before we start, Patrick, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I definitely think of useless antagonists. And for those who don't know, that you can be an antagonist without being a villain. So this isn't. That's why
Yes.
we're taking the broader term.
Yes.
Sometimes, like, I mean, people you love in your life can be antagonistic to you. My parents have been antagonistic to me at times, and still, love them. And I'm sure a lot of people have experiences like that. So we're going with the broader term. But for me, a useless antagonist either doesn't make the crew or the protagonist make difficult choices or push them into choices that they have to make to advance their character or advance the story. Um,
Mm.
or in the case of them being villains, they're just villains that show up, and I'm absolutely not afraid and don't think there's any real chance that that the crew of whatever show is going to not figure it out and save the day.
And I think of a great antagonist being someone that, um, for instance, like, okay, you love Captain Picard, but this person is an admiral that's over him, and he or she does something in a way that pretty much trips him up or stops him from doing a certain thing the way that he would do it, and they give him an order that's kind of difficult, like, oh, should I follow out this order, or should I find a
Yeah,
different way to take care of this? And but it causes that level of tension with the character. Like, if I don't follow this order, it could mean the court martial or me getting reprimanded. But also could also mean that these people or whatever situation that they're in could be destroyed. And I know the correct direction I need to go, but I have this order there that's stopping me.
yeah, exactly. And they're not being a bad moral. They're not like
Yeah.
telling him to do something illegal, like the dude from. Well, this is a great weekend to bring up this movie title, Insurrection. Not to get political, but like the admiral from Insurrection was telling him to do something illegal. An admiral telling you to do something you don't want to do or you have small moral qualms with, but you're not
Mm-hmm.
like actually breaking the law or anything like that. Like doesn't make them a bad admiral. They're just people that are pushing you into a tough decision, which is a good antagonist.
And Admiral Nechayev is one of those admirals that comes to mind on that. She's not a badmiral, but you could question some of her orders and what she pushed Jean Luc Picard or even Cisco to do something that was totally against what they probably would have done.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Was she also the admiral that put Judge Sati on the ship? No, no, no. I don't think so.
No, no, no. That was some random black admiral that
Okay.
I believe we only saw that one time. And he had zero lines. Literally, the only thing he did was get up and walk out at the end.
What a sweet check to collect as an actor.
I,
Just
I,
put on some clothes, get up and walk out with a frown on your face, um,
I'm really
and
curious.
never be heard from again.
I'm curious as to what he got paid for that, just to do that, just to be in that one scene.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about the actors' contracts, but I know they have a day rate, and the day rate's based on like experience
Hmm.
and things like that. So I don't know. He probably didn't walk away like a rich man, but like, I'd be surprised if he didn't get, you know, a few hundred, maybe like $1,000 off of just doing
Yeah,
that or something like that.
didn't necessarily walk away with generational wealth money, but probably walked off with probably 4 or 5 of my paychecks combined
Probably,
for one
probably,
scene,
yeah.
which that makes me just a bit depressed now that I'm thinking about that. Anywho, let's move forward with the
It means you
conversation.
should go try and get famous in Hollywood. That's
uh,
just
is
drop
it
your life and move to LA.
isn't Hollywood close to LA? As of
Oh,
right
it's right in
now,
it.
LA is not doing too hot, but Let's
What
not
in
make this
that
political. Let's not
they're
make this
trying to have a
political.
peaceful protest?
Let's not make this political. Because Star Trek isn't political. Okay, let's not go that direction. Okay.
If you guys are wondering what we're referring to, I will refer you back to the fascism episode to break down what's
Yes.
going on in LA right now.
Yes.
So,
But anywho, without further ado, let's move forward with the conversation. So, we both
Nachayev
did.
doesn't check the box for either of us,
Nachayev
apparently.
does it only
Yeah.
because I only thought of her not necessarily fully an antagonist to um, the Star Trek characters, but enough. Like I liked her character enough to be able to point out that she could have had more depth to her character, which is what I
Yeah.
pointed out last week. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, spoiler alert, she's not on this list.
Nope.
So,
And who knows if we'll even get through the whole list. We'll see what we do.
oh yeah, good point to point that out. This may be just like last week's episode where we may not be able to talk about every single person, and we'll probably have to do a part two at some point in the future to go through the full list, or even touch on like people or certain persons that we may have missed this time around. So, but I do want to start off with your number one on your list.
Yeah. Oh, and it's not in any order. That's just like the first folks who came to mind. So this isn't a ranking. We'd have to almost talk through this and then rank later. But yeah, Captain Gabriel Lorca, I thought was a pretty useless antagonist. But I'm open to my mind being changed because I didn't do a Discovery season one rewatch. My thinking
Uh
with
huh.
this is I don't like him. I don't like his
Okay.
politics. I
Okay.
don't like how he betrayed the crew and what he did.
Uh huh.
But does any of that actually matter? Like he was trying to take over the mirror universe, and I don't remember. And this is where maybe you can correct me. Maybe I'm big wrong here. I don't remember him saying he was like going to come back and take over the regular Federation. So I think about that whole thing. I'm like, why did they have to stop him once he got to the mirror universe? Like they went and stopped him from taking over the mirror universe. And I'm like, wait, why do we? And does the Prime Directive not apply to the mirror universe? I guess not, because Spock. Because the,
Interesting.
but like, yeah, I was trying to think like, I enjoyed Discovery season one. I don't take anything away from it. And I feel like in the moment, I also wanted to stop Lorca. But when I was thinking about this list, I'm like, oh, it's because I don't like him. But I'm not sure I had to. I think that maybe they had to rescue Stamets, and that's why they
Great,
went to do it. But yeah,
great point. Great point. And in full transparency, I'm kind of blanking on some of it because it's been a while since I've seen that particular episode on
yeah,
Discovery season one. But I like your direction that you were going there. I was thrown off by you having him on this list because I felt like he was used enough and his character was developed enough in a way to deem him not being useless.
mm-hmm,
But now that you've pointed it in that particular way, I find myself like rethinking my thoughts on it because you make some very interesting points. Because so he was not wanting to come back to the regular universe to take it over. His whole point was when he was in the regular universe, something happened on the ship that he was in, and he got propelled into that universe from the mirror
yeah, into
universe.
the normal universe.
Yes, and he was trying to get back to that universe. So he assumed that Lorca's full identity and just pretty much tried to play the part as much as possible to find
Yeah,
that his opportunity to get back to the mirror universe. But
and mhm.
your the part that I found interesting is that when they got there, did they really need to foil him? Like, because he all he wanted was to go back, It should just like had him go back, boom, be done with it, go back to the normal universe.
Yeah, I think they had some. I think they had to go to the mirror universe to either to rescue Burnham, maybe, and maybe rescue Stamets, who had gotten themselves over there in some way. But they played a role in helping Emperor Giorgio not let him take over the mirror universe. And I can't remember. I'm either not remembering or it's just a bit of like we don't like this dude, so we're just gonna like keep him from doing what he's done. I'm like, why was it important to stop him? I don't think he was going to do anything but take over the mirror universe, which we weren't going to be part of anyways, because we're just going to get our folks and leave. Like, so
Yeah, it's almost
yeah.
like he was created as a Deus Ex Machina or like a plot device just to have it to where Burnham could get onto the Discovery ship, things to ensue where people start to like trust Burnham and she's part of the crew at that point, and then like okay, now it's time to get rid of him, and at that time then it leaves it open to where Burnham could either become first officer or captain. So I see
Hmm.
I'm seeing your direction here, and I'm finding it hard to refute him being on this list. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, you take a giant step back. So maybe one day we'll do a Discovery season one rewatch, and there will be some sentence where he's like, "And I'm gonna come back and destroy the Federation, and it'll all be mine." And but I do not remember him
I
saying
don't
that at
remember
all.
that at all. I don't think that even happened. To
And
be
I
honest
remember
with you,
quite a bit of his like final monologue before they blew up the ship um, that he was on, and there was a lot of like modern day political um, analogies and
hmm
comparisons made
hmm
there that made it feel good for me that they blew up his ship. But when I think back on it, I'm like, that was a completely unnecessary part of the mission. I think.
so okay, so remember when we were talking during the sound check, and I was telling you that there was something that I wanted to point out on live.
Oh yeah, where I was talking about how not every because this was in relation to Harry Mudd, who is going to raise some people's hackles when they hear this that we're going to be talking about him as useless, but hang in there. But yeah, I was thinking about that in relation to Harry Mudd, where like it's cool to have antagonists and even villains sometimes that don't like raise the stakes to always the highest levels because it lets other stories happen, other kind of light
Hmm
moments happen, and you get kind of like these cotton candy episodes where it's like good for sweets, but and keeps the whole show from just being heavy, heavy, heavy all the time.
hmm
But it does make, I think, the antagonists and villains of those episodes just a tad useless because they didn't really do anything for the show.
So rewatching old school Star Trek, so TNG, and apologies, my once again my wife is not here at this time where I'm like recording. She normally keeps the dogs at bay, so that's why you hear the dogs in the background. I do apologize. Um,
Tell her she need to come on home. No, I'm sorry. Cut that out.
well, no, I'm leaving that in there. So,
I'm never going to get a girlfriend now.
so
Odds were long already.
so I'm starting to understand people's gripes with Discovery, and I think I pointed this out last week as well.
Mm.
Like I am starting to understand why people don't like Discovery, and want
That
that
is a
to even
shocker.
be part of the pantheon of the rest of Star Trek, such as TNG, Discovery. I mean, not Discovery, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, so on and so forth. It's a certain tone and a certain um, feeling that the previous directors and actors portrayed the characters that was the true spirit of Star Trek. And that's why a lot of
Hmm.
people don't feel like that Deep Space, not Deep Space, Discovery, excuse me, I keep doing that, Freudian slip, uh, that they feel Discovery doesn't embody that. And I see why. Granted, Granted, there are some that's just either racist, sexist,
Right.
and just don't want to see either,
Misogynistic folks.
yeah, a black person, let alone a woman or black woman, be the main character,
Because I'll
or
offend the audience. If you've ever called Michael Burnham a Mary Sue, you don't know what a Mary Sue
you
is.
don't know what a Mary Sue is. Yeah, agreed. Um,
Luke Skywalker, the biggest Mary Sue in the history of sci-fi, and you're sitting here talking about Burnham. Okay.
I mean, really, Ray and Star Wars could be
Oh
considered.
my. It's
I'm
like,
pretty
why are
sure
you
that's
so
a.
good at everything
I'm,
after living in the desert?
I'm pretty sure that is a very loaded conversation to have on a Star Trek podcast. So we won't even go that direction. But um, I felt like the episodic nature of Discovery was the downfall to
You mean
that
a
particular
serial
show.
nature?
Yeah, the serial nature. Excuse me. I always keep
Okay.
saying that. I always mix up the two, and you always correct me.
It it's easy to do. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, the serial nature of it, and not going the episodic route, because that's what TNG, TOS, like each episode pretty much standing alone by itself, unless it was like a continuing from another part of the episode. But for the most part, like you saw some development from characters if you like watched everything in order. But the best thing about it was, and I guess that's what made me fall in love with it when I was a kid as well, because a lot of times I didn't watch the original episode of it. A lot of times I was watching the rerun, and I never felt like it was disjointed from me. Where one night I was watching the episode from season one, and then the other night I was watching the episode from season six.
Hmm.
So I feel like that nature, well, them, it's the same issue that I felt like when adding in Lorca, when with us talking about Lorca and him being an antagonist that wasn't utilized well. Um, they were trying to figure out a beginning and end for this character, and the whole purpose of this character was to pretty much get Burnham on Discovery, to and then they had to and this is the crazy thing about Lorca as well. They had to make it that he loved her in the mirror universe,
Right.
which was one of the main reasons why he sought after her to bring her aboard Discovery as well.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's why she was also in the mirror universe as well, because I think the whole Discovery ship got thrown into the mirror universe, if
Yeah.
I'm
It did.
remember correctly. But he wanted to
Hmm.
bring her also into the mirror universe and be there with him to rule the mirror universe together.
Yeah. It got weird.
It did. It did. And
It got weird.
it flipped everything quickly.
Hmm.
So it kind of gave the fans whiplash when they did this. It's like, okay, that's why Lorca seemed like he was more of a villain at some points and wasn't doing things like really the Federation way, because he was part of the mirror universe. But I felt he could
Yeah.
have been a stronger character if they just made it to where he had um, complicated ideas of how the Federation should be.
Yeah. That would have been cool. It would have been an interesting line to toe because he was supposed to be so like undercover, um, that if his true authoritarian leanings from the
Mm-hmm.
mirror universe started to show, like people might be like, what's up with this dude? I mean, because they honestly they did some of that with like, because he had like a secret lab or whatever
Mm-hmm.
on Discovery with like a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of weird stuff, um, in it, and like so they kind of showed that like there's some like leaks around this character where it's like, why is he so strange? And then you find out he's from the mirror universe. But yeah, I think they could have pushed that mystery a lot to the edge, like you said, by him having like some views on the Federation where people would have like scratched their head and all that stuff
Yeah, yeah.
to push that storyline.
I felt like he probably would have made more of an interesting character if he had not been from the mirror universe.
Hmm.
If I'm being real. But they also used the mirror universe thing to also bring back Georgiou as well.
Yeah, yeah. Which I still have you seen the this is
I
gonna
have
sound like
not.
we're talking offline.
I have
I haven't
not.
seen it yet either. Everyone like hated on it too quickly before I could like cut it on.
For those that don't know, we're talking about the what
Section
Section
31.
31. Yeah, the Section 31 movie. It was supposed to be a series, but then they like pivoted and made it into like a movie of some sorts. I still have not sat down and watched that. I think it's the same way. It's funny because watching this last season of Discovery, granted, like we've had this conversation before. Watching the last season of Discovery has made me understand more of the issues with Discovery. But granted, like they didn't know that this was going to be the last season, and
There's yeah.
the beginning portion of the season they were going one way and then they learned, oh, this is the last season, so they had to like pivot and go a different direction. But I felt like even with that, I felt like the previous seasons were kind of like that.
Well, the season long arc and always the universe at risk and things like that takes the exploration out of it. The just
Exactly.
like we're gonna show
Exactly.
up at a place, figure what it's about. It's real weird. We're gonna try to save the day, like and move on to the next planet that we got very used to with them being explorers.
Yes.
As Star Trek, and yeah, Discovery never leaned into that. There was always like some high profile military mission or mystery that needed to be figured out that they were always on. Like I don't know if they ever did. Was there an episode where they ever like just truly like rolled up on some anomaly that they didn't
It was
that there
very
were
rare. It was very
yeah
rare. They did, I want to say, a handful of times, and I'm probably giving them too much credit here, but I couldn't tell you that without doing a rewatch, which I have
yeah
not done with Discovery yet. Uh,
yeah. I mean, it just ended, so yeah
exactly. But like I was saying before, the serial nature, and then what you were pointing out, like where you have to have the cotton candy in there sometimes.
yeah. They're
It
very no cotton candy.
Yeah, it was all
Well,
so it was
except for one,
always
but
a
yeah.
serious tone. So like there was a serious situation going on for that season, and for them to have like a cotton candy episode where things slowed down and they were just doing the exploring or the discovery phase of their job, it almost seemed mundane because it's like okay, y'all focusing on this, but we got this universal ending situation going on.
It feels off task.
It
Yeah,
does.
exactly.
It does. And I feel like that was the detriment to that series. And Captain Lorca being a part of that series also was one of those things where it's like he could have been used differently in a way to where he could have been a antagonist later on in the seasons where he just
Yeah,
didn't have to be in just season one, killed off, and then just like, oh, we're done with that, moving right along.
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the Marvel problem where they've
Exactly.
killed off a bunch of their best villains,
Exactly.
and we don't get to fight them anymore. Yeah, I think that's always been the fairest criticism of this. Like people trying not to make it canon and all that stuff, I always thought was out of pocket. But I've always thought that that was a weakness of Discovery. That some of the Star Trek, and always by like the end of most seasons,
Hmm.
there was more of a Star Trek spirit, especially the one where they were like um, chasing the advance race that had the mining tool, and they had to like figure that. Like that felt very like, oh, you have to understand new life and a new civilization, like very on brand end of that season. But
Yeah.
yeah, like a lot of it was like we're at war with the Klingons, and that's all we're going to focus on. And the Red Angel is
The
here, and
Red
that's all we're going
Angel.
to focus on. Yeah,
And then what was that? Control,
Control. Yeah, had to stop Control.
and then the burn, and it was always high stakes, always
Mm-hmm.
high stakes, and like that's what TNG did such a good job, in my opinion, and even by that same respect, DS9, where it wasn't always high stakes. There were some high stakes moments and some high stakes episodes. The best of both worlds being one of them from
Right.
TNG. But there were also those other episodes that would just focus on, hey, we're going to this planet and it's first contact. Hey, we're going to this planet where some craziness happened, where one of our people was here, and we're now investigating. And then, like, things unfold from that. And I think Discovery missed that. The writers missed that with Discovery. However, with Strange New Worlds has gotten us back on track with that, and that's why the Star Trek community can't agree that Strange New Worlds is probably one of the best Star Trek series that ever occurred within the past 2 decades, really.
Yeah, yeah. There's more room for, and just bringing it back to the topic. That's like the space for the useless antagonist, the useless villain. Like, you need some of those episodes that are kind of fun, kind of explory, that aren't necessarily the highest stakes because it's like that's where some real creativity and like
Mm-hmm.
exploration, for lack of a better word, to overuse the word a little bit, can happen. And so Star Trek kind of needs these folks a little bit, even though we're calling them useless, because just functionally, like, oftentimes when these people showed up, nothing happened or something unnecessary to where these characters are going happened. Which is I'm not sure if you're ready to turn the page, but that's like my assertion about Harry Mudd. Um,
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I was
yeah.
going to turn the page, definitely. And I wanted to focus on your whole feeling with Harry Mudd because, like, granted, like, once again, I have not rewatched the original series. The last time I saw the original series, I was a kid. And even then, I didn't see all episodes, like, from beginning to end. So I don't have a full context of, like, the arc of everything, but I do
Mm-hmm.
remember practically one or two Harry Mudd episodes in TOS, um,
Yeah, there were
and
two.
then him also being introduced in DS9, and I loved what they did with the character in DS9 as well. So it's kind of hard for me to say that he's useless, but I definitely want to hear your arguments on that.
So I was also conflicted when I put him on there, to the point where, like, I even in my own mind, I'm like, I'm not quite sure why I'm putting him on this list, and that's why. And
To be
you all know
antagonistic.
that. Yeah, I know, right? Because I want to be a useful antagonist. Uh, you guys all know we're gonna do a TOS rewatch at some point, but I watched the two TOS episodes, and in both episodes, he's highly entertaining. He's a scoundrel. He's a good foil. I think you
Hmm.
used that word earlier. Foil to someone who's as earnest and as serious as Kirk. So like it's good and interesting and frustrating for him to be around. But in the original series, I think in both episodes, he ends up basically like not being a threat.
Hmm.
Kirk doesn't make any like big decisions or grows as Kirk for any reason because Mudd is around. Like Mudd is highly annoying to him, but even in the second Mudd episode where they're like on the planet with the androids,
Hmm.
like like there was a moment where they were all left in a room together and they were like, yeah, we're in trouble, and like it felt like it was sarcastic. Like the crew didn't feel like it was in danger. Kirk was just upset because he's like, Mudd is creating work for him, and then
Yeah.
like by the end of, like I said, both episodes, like Mudd is actively trying to work against the situation that he created. Um, at the end of the day, with the heroes, and then the heroes throw him in jail or sentence him to something because he's a rabble rouser. So I'm like, it's it's fun. I like the Mudd episodes to a certain extent. I mean, we're gonna have thoughts on the original series when we get there, but you know, it was entertaining to watch. At least it was not boring to watch. And same thing about his appearance on Discovery in his big episode, because he was in 2 episodes of Discovery, but one was like his episode where it's like, okay, the real thing that's going on in this episode is that Ash Tyler and Burnham are falling more in love, but Harry Mudd is here
Yeah.
causing the issue that maybe like forces the conversation, but that's not what he's here to do. And even then, I think the Discovery crew was a little bit more afraid that they weren't going to figure it out because there was this time travel aspect and all that stuff. But they do eventually get ahead of him, and he's quite easily taken down, even at his most ticked off and menacing I think he's ever been as a character. And so for me, it's kind of like, okay, if we never had gotten Harry Mudd, he doesn't move Kirk along, he doesn't move Lorca along. He very incidentally moves along this Ash Tyler Burnham love story that gets totally
Yeah.
replaced by something else later. So I'm kind of like, all right, well, useful, useless. I mean, I guess useful to me as a person who likes watching the Cotton Candy episodes, but in the grand scheme of things, that's my argument. And now the internet may hate me, but hey, if y'all use racial slurs, we're gonna cut you off. But
Well,
you can disagree, but but
well,
keep it cool.
in this case, okay, one, you presented your argument very well. You pointed
Thank you.
out a lot of things that makes me think, and I'm just like, it's once again, I'm finding it kind of hard to refute him being on this list because, and granted, like, also, this is also going on the fact that my knowledge of the character is like I didn't rewatch those TOS episodes in my older age to be able to
Yeah.
analyze the character more when you did. So this might change when I finally do rewatch those episodes. But also at the same time, I feel like you laid out the episodes pretty well to be able to state like how he wasn't used in a way. I kind of think of it like this. So Kang Nguyen Soon would be like the Joker to Captain
Mm.
Kirk,
Mm-hmm.
Batman. So Mud would have been more like the Riddler to Batman. Still not his greatest foe, but a foe that was fooled him enough to where he's a nuisance. Like you don't think the Riddler is going to kill Batman or fully stop Batman. Like Batman's going to find a way to foil him
Mm-hmm.
in the end. But you always feel like the Joker might be able to one up Batman at some point.
Y'all, the unpopular black gamer is spitting right now. That is a 100% perfect analogy, I think, right there in terms of the relation to those characters. And in fact, they in the comics, because spoiler alert, we're both giant Batman fans, lifelong Batman fans as
Huge,
well. I know that's
huge.
a shocker to you guys, listening to people on a Star Trek podcast. Um, but they don't make the Riddler more menacing. I think the most menacing I've seen him is in. It is not even in the comics. It's the animated
The animated.
movie of Hush, where spoiler alert, they make him Hush as opposed to what happens in the comic books. And I'm like, oh, this is the worst he's ever been. Because you're right. Otherwise, even in the Batman video games, he's like a side mission
He
kind
is.
of nuisance. Yeah,
But it's
like
more of a
that was good.
nuisance. It's really more of a nuisance because of all the darn uh, Riddler statues you had to find to open up this other mission to fully 100% the game. So,
Yeah, I gave up on that.
but see, and
I did not do that.
yeah, I did. I did it all. But anywho,
Whew.
we're not gonna touch on that. I'm a huge Batman fan. Like our other great friend James, he's a huge Spider-Man fan, and we actually like talked on this as how he 100% the Spider-Man games. Whenever there's a Batman game, I 100% those. Like because I'm a
It's a
huge.
lot easier to 100% the Spider-Man games there. Like
I don't
I
know. I don't know.
I 100% the Spider-Man games, and I gave up on 100%ing those Arkham games. So I feel like, and I definitely at some point was like, I'm gonna get all the Riddler trophies, or I'm gonna solve all the Riddler problems. And I was just like, I can't do this. There's too
Well,
many of them.
granted, there's a crap ton. Granted, like thanks to the internet, I was able to like do a lot of those Riddler challenges. But granted, some of those Riddler challenges allowed were even though I had the internet to tell me exactly what to do, it still meant that I had to be good at controlling Batman to do it the right way to get said trophy. So,
Yep, yep. But I think
but
that's perfect. Harry Mudd is the Riddler in the Star Trek universe, which is why I don't mind when he shows up. Like, I feel like I'm going to have an entertaining episode, but if you took the Riddler out of Batman's rogues
Pantheon,
gallery,
yeah,
yeah, there's still Ra's al Ghul. There's still the Joker,
yeah,
as you pointed out. There's still Catwoman, who's antagonist, girlfriend, but sometimes a villain. There's still like the organized crime bosses. Like it's not like you lose sleep if the
but
Riddler wasn't a thing.
but
But since
going
he's
back
here,
to
I
your
still enjoy it sometimes.
but going back to your same thing that you pointed out, like with how Riddler evolved, his evolution of the character, and then becoming more menacing with him becoming Hush, like I felt like Mud could have had that moment, and I believe that's what they were trying to do with Discovery, with him,
Yeah, exactly. Hmm.
which was weird to me because I'm like Discovery happened before TOS, so he was more menacing in his past than what he was in his future.
I think they try to imply, because I just watched the episode last night because I watched the three major Mud episodes.
Uh huh.
I think they try to imply that because at the end of the Discovery episode, they turn him over to Stella,
Uh huh.
um, to kind of like be with him, and Stella's revealed as like this very loving, girlfriend person, versus how she's portrayed in the original series as like really kind of like a stereotypical old battle axe
Yeah. Yeah.
60s kind of wife, which when we talk about TOS, I guess we'll cover the lack of women's right in that but whatever. So I think the implication or what they're trying to imply is that the time he was forced to spend with Stella softened him from like,
Softened him.
yeah, someone who could be that angry to like want to kill someone to someone who's actually just like a con man, you know, type person who's like not really that dangerous. So I think that's what they're trying to imply at the end of the episode. But to your point, it's still development that's not shown or reversed and put on the table for our entertainment.
But when I think of a good antagonist, though, or a good person that foils the main protagonist of that either series or even that episode, um, when I think of that person, I think of someone that like changes and stretches that character, and then after that whole situation that they had with said antagonist, it's changed them for either the better or the worse going forward.
Yeah,
So that character has a strong um, uh, 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 a strong impact on that particular character or characters that made them like change in some type of way, whether good or bad.
yeah, that's the most useful kind of antagonist or villain. But antagonist is the broader word they were using, and Mud is definitely creates entertaining work, in my opinion. But when you watch those, we'll revisit this topic,
We will.
because
We will.
I
I,
feel
I did find that very interesting, and I think about like the antagonist that TNG had when it came to Picard and Riker and the rest of the team. Like, I feel like you could name a lot of antagonists that really either fooled them or got on their nerves enough, or even sometimes it was more of a race and not just one specific person.
yeah,
I mean, there's even one episode that I like think of when it comes to Picard that when I think about like a great antagonist.
There are four lights.
Great
Every
antagonist,
episode.
great
But sure,
antagonist. It
good
stretched the
statement.
character.
I mean, we're
Hey, at least
shoehorning a great antagonist into our useless antagonist episode, but okay.
at least it fits. At least it fits with what we're talking about. And I'm not just
Yeah.
pulling out my butt here. Uh, no, but
Well,
uh huh.
you actually made me think of, and maybe we'll get to this person because I know we just did two of mine, so we probably need to do a couple of yours. But you made me just think of another one that falls into that Harry Mudd model from TNG that I thought you were going to mention before I realized you were just setting up your audio clip. But let's roll on because I don't want to. We need to get to some
Okay,
of yours that you're looking forward to talk to.
okay. I'm probably gonna be uh okay. Those fans that really like Voyager, y'all gonna help hate me this episode. So,
Well, anyone who likes Harry Mudd and the Riddler is going to be out for blood with me. So we're making very useful enemies today. Is probably
so you had put on the list the Malon in Voyager, and I wholeheartedly agree. Like they were actually on my original list as well. So when you put them down, I was like, "Oh, that's hilarious."
the
The
trash hauling people.
the trash
Yeah,
hauling, yeah, people, because I do feel like that they were a waste of a race that could have been more menacing to Voyager and for them because they were their race and their society was the opposite of the Federation and what
yeah,
they stood for. So it's like that makes sense for them to come across a people that were completely different from their views and didn't care about they just wanted to just toss their waste anywhere and didn't care if it like affected another society or not because all they were doing this for was for money on their world basically because that was a lucrative
yeah.
business.
And was it they were in the void and there were like people or creatures living in the void or something?
They were in a part
But
of the Delta Quadrant where it was just like void of
anything.
yeah
Yeah.
of anything, and they found a wormhole into that area, and they thought that it was like one of the best spots for them to dump their waste, but apparently there was like these living creatures in that area.
Yeah, someone was counting on it still being a void that wasn't polluted, and they were just like, "We don't care."
Hmm.
Yeah, I think Voyager just blew them up.
Oh yeah, they blew
Like I
them
don't.
up and then blew up the wormhole on their while
Yeah,
using said wormhole.
that's right. Because there was I guess that was like foreshadowing to the end of the series. Now that I think about it,
Funny.
but there was a the main driver of that episode was the fact that everyone was so bored. Watching an episode of other people be bored is quite the premise, anyways. But if I remember, it was like Janeway wanted to do something heroic, and they were like, "Nah, this is Fast and Furious. We're doing this as family." And then they just like blew up the
Yeah,
Malon. I was
yeah.
like, okay.
And but like okay, so that's my thing. That's my thing with the Mayline. Every time they were introduced in a situation that allowed one of the main characters to grow. And you got to see like their particular motivations. Like what you just pointed out, like the ending to that particular episode, uh Janeway came up with the idea of them using the wormhole to get further, closer to home. And she was going to close the wormhole on the other side and just pretty much be stranded there in a shuttle.
Yeah,
And
because she was feeling guilty.
yeah, because she was feeling guilty for pretty much trapping them in the Delta Quadrant for all these years.
Because it was all her fault, but we'll revisit that some other time.
It was actually that we need to put that down as a topic that Voyager being stuck in the Delta Quadrant was all Janeway's fault. That's a good topic to point out next
Yeah, I'll
later
add
in
it
the
to the
year.
list while you're talking.
And then they also one of the other episodes with them was when they finally introduced the Delta Flyer, because they were like racing to try to get the spatial
Can
probe that got
can
into
I
this
stop you right
planet.
there real quick?
Uh huh.
I know I'm interrupting. I know I'm interrupting, but
No, go ahead.
I thought to put them on the list, and I didn't even realize they were in multiple episodes. That's how useless these people are to me. This is like
Granted,
breaking news that they were even in the episode to me.
granted, you haven't fully rewatched the Voyager series like I have, so I do
Sure.
remember. I believe every episode they were in, and I want to say it was
Okay.
3 episodes. However, like in those 3 episodes, like what I'm pointing out, I felt like that they did stretch the characters and made them better, because the Delta Flyer episode was a Belana centric episode where she was battling the whole her finding out that all the Maquis were
Oh
killed,
yeah. She was
and
like trying to desperately get herself killed out of guilt. She had survivor's guilt like a
she had
champ.
survivor's guilt, yeah, and she was just like trying to feel, and I felt like they were also a good antagonist to put in that episode to for her, and like like I said, she grew off of that particular episode. And then the third one, also another Bailana centric episode,
Hmm.
where they had a ship, they had a Malon freighter that got out of control and was about to explode, and if it would have exploded, it would have exploded in a star system that would have destroyed countless civilizations. So they had to
Okay.
board back on the ship to like stop it from exploding or find a better way uh, to dispose of their waste to where it wouldn't
Okay.
harm a civilization. But once again, that was Balana centric, where she was like being angry and everything, and like
Hmm.
learn to control that anger and harness that anger better. Which also, which also is the episode where you actually got to see how the sonic showers work as well.
Oh.
Because at the
Oh
very
yeah, she does
end,
take a shower.
she takes a sonic shower, and that's probably one of the. If I'm blanking this, if there was ever a time in TNG or DS9 that this was shown, I don't believe it was up until this point. And that was the first time you
Nah,
actually saw
that
like the swirls go around her and just like taking off all the particles of dust, of dirt and grime off of her.
which did we talk about the sonic showers in our technology episode?
We did touch on the sonic
Okay.
showers a bit.
So I'm probably repeating myself where I'm like, I don't know how it doesn't kill you or it doesn't make you use the bathroom on yourself when it does that.
It doesn't make sense.
Um,
It is the technology that does not make sense.
yeah. And then I don't know why, but I feel like I have perfect memory of every time a shower was on Star Trek. I remember Archer being in a shower, but that was like a water shower on Enterprise. And then Lower Decks shows like the communal shower for the lower deckers. And I think that's one. But that, like you said, that post dates Voyager.
It does
And I
post-date
don't know.
Voyager.
I'm gonna have to have a long conversation with myself after this about why I'm holding on to Star Trek shower knowledge. But I'll sort that out offline and maybe with my therapist. We'll get to the bottom of that.
Granted though, Voyager was also the series that showed that they still do take baths as well.
Because of Neelix, who
Uh,
we
Ne-
talked about last
yeah,
episode. Yeah.
Neelix in the very first episode, and then later on they show Janeway taking a bath, and then like so on and so forth. So,
So,
uh huh.
so when do you decide to take a sonic shower? Wait a minute. So why don't you just? Okay, we already established that the sonic shower makes no sense. I'm not gonna.
I was about to say you're getting off task here. We're going into It sounds like we need a part two of like BS technologies. I think we need a part two on that.
I guess maybe because I live here in the real world where we all just bathe in water. I'm like, well, why would you use sound if you have water available? Like, I don't know.
We'll get
There's an
back to that. I
episode.
have a thought on that, but I don't want to discuss it on this one because that'll cause us to go longer.
Okay, and not in the spirit of going on, but I do remember there is some part in TNG where
Hmm.
someone goes to their quarters and washes their face. Or that
Yeah.
might have happened in Voyager too. So it's not like they don't have plumbing. So, but anywho, you're right.
Yes. Yes. They only showed them like using water to do something like that, but I, for the life of me, I can't think of a time where they showed or even referred to someone taking a bath on TNG. I could be
No.
mistaken.
Oh yeah.
I could be mistaken.
Troy. Why do I remember this? Troy was in the bath when she turned into a lizard.
Oh, the
That's where
episode
that's where
where
Worf found her.
everybody like had some type of mutation because of
Yeah, they all de-evolved
Barclay's.
supposedly.
Yeah. Huh.
Why God? Why do I? Why do I? Like,
The fact that I've
Chad, you may
rewatched
not know
that.
this about me, but I have like really important stuff I have to remember. Like most people in life.
The
I
funny
don't
thing
know
about
why I
that
remember
is
everyone bathing in Star Trek.
the funny thing about that is I've rewatched that recently and like I don't remember that, but you did. And the last time you rewatched that was a while ago.
I'm not sure what's happening. Look, I got therapy on Thursday. I will unpack this. There's something. I don't know if it's because I don't have a girlfriend or like I don't know. How personal can I get on this on the internet here? Something's off, but we'll figure it out. I got folks to help me sort through this. I'll
Okay,
call my parents after this
so getting back to the Maylon in
before I
Voyager.
have a psychotic breakdown.
Yes, getting back to the Maylon. I would put. Okay, so I feel like Voyager should have had almost every season a main antagonist or villain race. Practically every season because it's like okay they're finally out of this one part of the quadrant, so they're into another part of the quadrant where it could be
Mm-hmm.
another race that is like the main power in this one because the first race that I can think of and you put them on the list is the Kazon, and I found it interesting that you put them on the list, and you said and you even put in the notes the Kazon dot 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 all of them.
I kind of forgot I had done that.
Which I thought was hilarious that you did that. However, I don't feel like the Kazon was used wrong because they were a central focus and a central antagonist to Voyager and their crew for multiple seasons, at least season 1 and 2, a lot. And then you had Maj Kala, uh, who became like the central face for the Malon. Not the Malon,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, the Kazon. Excuse me. These names sound quite similar now I'm thinking
We
about it.
just stumbled upon something. Voyager should have worked a little bit more on and the fact that the Kazon are knockoff Klingons and their name starts with a K. Like they didn't even like take a minute to try to separate that more. But
True.
I'm like, this is your part.
True. True. They are the Delta Quadrant equivalent of today is a good day to die. So,
Absolutely.
so I don't consider the Kazon as useless because they fooled them a lot. There were plenty of episodes where um, they were thorns in Voyager's side to where the characters grew. Not just one character, a multitude of characters grew. And their faction or their race ended in a way to where it wrapped their race up in a way to where it's like, okay, yeah, we're done with this antagonistic race, so we can move on to another antagonist for Voyager because we're out of their space. now, and we just offed Maj Kala, and by that
Oh yeah,
extension,
yeah.
the
Seska.
yeah, Seska, and by that extension, Seska, who was also a part of that crew that ended up joining the Kazon.
Yeah. I think those are all great points. I think my issue with them is more related to my second definition, and maybe this is me needing to rework my definition because I think everything you just said was true. They did put Voyager into difficult spots, made characters make difficult choices, especially like Chakotay got
Mm-hmm.
targeted at some point. So they kind of clear the useful antagonist bar. They were truly always a villain, though, that I was never afraid of. And I think the writers set them up as like,
You talking about the
well,
Kazon?
yeah.
You were never afraid of them. So even when they took over Voyager and like had them stranded on the planet.
And this is kind of like my issue with Mud. There was never a part where I felt like the Starfleet people weren't going to figure out. Um, like that was probably the most terrifying and menacing they were, and I still kind of felt like, well, they'll just figure this out. Like, like I guess maybe this is just me, and uh, I might be a little bit off here, but I just don't remember an episode where I was like truly ever thinking the Kazon are going to win. And I think the reason why is because the writers set them up at the beginning as
Mm-hmm.
technologically backwards, behind Starfleet, all that stuff. So the heroes
I
always
can see
felt
that.
a few steps ahead of the Kazon, even when they got, and so they equalized it out a bit when they got Seska, but that was still just like one person, and like that's as close as they ever got, which made for, I mean, granted, some entertaining Voyager. I'll give Voyager that, but like because they set them up that way, I was still just kind of like, oh, when they show up, we'll just blow them up. Like, I mean, we'll figure it out, and I think that kind of like took some of the fear away for me.
And I found, but I did find them to be. Ooh, one of my alarms going off. My bad. But I did find them to be one of the one of the factions next to the board that gave them the most of a headache, though. Because I mean, technically, a show that's centered around a group of people, you're always going to feel like that they're going to find some way to foil the plot of the antagonist, anyways. Like they're always going to come out on top. So,
Yeah, but yeah, huh? Go
but
ahead.
what you're saying is, and feel free to also correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is you feel like that you never put this race every time they attack Voyager in a way to where you felt like that they were going to actually achieve what they did.
Yeah, because I feel like even what you just said, and you can like take a step back and you know the show has to continue, and like
Mm-hmm.
the suspending of disbelief of being like, wow, the characters are going to pay a big price. They're going, maybe someone's going to get murked, get
Yeah.
got during this, or maybe things just won't be the same after you beat these people. Like when you beat the Borg, especially the first time you get away from the Borg, it's like, oh, everything's
Mm-hmm.
very different now. I never felt that with the Kazon. I was always just like, Janeway will figure out how to beat the Kazon. Like and I guess it's hard to explain because either, I think maybe that's the problem in my second definition is that it's very much a matter of taste. In my
Got you.
second definition of what makes you
Got you.
useful. I think if the writers had, because I guess a different example would of like someone who came off as very useful was the Krenim, and the Krenim were set up as very powerful, and I was like, I don't know what it's going to take to beat the Krenim
Yeah.
and how they're going to figure this out and all that.
Okay.
When I'm asking
Okay.
myself those kind of questions, then I'm like really bought in on a villain.
That's
But when the
fair.
villain is like set up as backwards and Janeway's better than them already, and it's just like, well, even if they catch up a little bit, Janeway will figure it out and just blow up their ship, which
And
is
he,
pretty much what happened.
and it's crazy because the Krenim were that was just a two episodes,
Yeah.
granted a two-parter, the Year of Hell. But they had did I feel like the writers did a great job of previous episodes pretty much talking them up before you got to the Krenim. Like the episode where Kess was doing her Benjamin Button's disease uh,
Yep.
thing where she was
For
going
an
back to
extended Kess conversation, listen to the last episode.
yeah go back to that one. Very interesting conversation. But it, they talked about the Krenim in that one, and then established it as like this big issue because you saw the part where Bailana had ended up dying, and the ship was very destroyed and everything. So they talked him up very well before you got to the introduction uh, of that race and
Yeah.
how powerful their ship was. And then it was also based off of time. And there was no way that the Voyager could even like lay a candle on it, especially after the fact of them fighting them and how awfully destroyed Voyager was after the fact. It did raise the stakes of it.
Yeah.
I
They
agree with you.
pushed they pushed Janeway to the point where she had to basically bet that if she could blow up the ship, it would reset the timeline. And she bet her life. She bet Voyager on it. Like, I don't think she totally knew when she crashed into it if that was going to fix everything. That seemed like a kind of like spur of the moment thing, and it just happened to fix everything.
Well, it's also one of
And
those
I'm like,
things in time travel where it could have been like this was just one version of Janeway, and that was ballsy. That now that you think about it, like that was one of the ultimate villains in Star Trek. Now that
yeah,
I'm thinking about it,
yeah,
okay,
for 2 episodes, right? Like, it would have been cool to. Well, I mean, we're going to get to one of these, I think, but they teased that there could have been more, but they never went back to it. Which, oddly enough, I think starts to fit your definition of useless, except that they weren't useless in their episode. But anyways, going back to the Kazon, that's why I'm kind of like even when I watched Voyager the first time, my expectation was this is just kind of the warm up villain.
well, so I'll agree with you. Number one with the Malon, not only were they on my list, but they were also on your list. I will agree with you that they were underutilized. I feel like they could have been utilized more and probably like had a whole season where the Malon really fooled them. And then
Mm-hmm.
the Kazon thing the ante should have been raised to a point with them to make you feel like that they could actually win.
Yeah, that especially after setting them up as behind. If they actually, which I think you're right, when they land the ship and kick them off and all that stuff, and like they couldn't even blow up the ship and they took over the ship. That's like the most I was ever afraid of them, and it still, for whatever reason, maybe I'm like, maybe it's just the accumulated not being afraid of the Kazon at that point because that was like one of their last storylines. It still, for some reason, felt like I was like, no, they'll be good. They'll figure out how to beat them. Versus like when the Klingons are the adversary, like during Discovery and during Deep Space Nine, I'm like, well, this is never fun.
Yeah.
War with the Klingons is never fun. I'm not quite sure when this is going to end because war is kind of their thing.
And but that's the crazy thing with DS9. When I'm thinking about the antagonist that they used in DS9, you always felt like that every one that like came up could really win. Like whatever they
Yeah.
were trying to do, you always felt like they could win. Oh, the Cleon episodes where the Cleons went to war with the Cardassians, and the Federation was trying to like kind of like stop them from having this war or whatnot, and they had to. It was Cisco, O'Brien, Worf, and Odo who had to like go undercover in the Klingon society and act like
Mm-hmm.
Klingons to like discover what's going on there. Like I know exactly what's going to occur in this episode, but I still have the anxiety when they go to the planet of them being discovered.
Oh yeah, that was a stressful episode. But Deep Space Nine was designed to be stressful. What, which is interesting. Was that Discovery conversation on or off air? I can't even remember now. That was
Uh,
earlier this episode, right?
which one? What did we discuss? Because we had a lot of conversations about Discovery.
Yeah, well, we were discussing like what some of the fairest criticisms of the show was, but
Yeah, that was on
that
there.
was
That was on there.
yeah, that was on
What I
air. Yeah, that's where like I think your point about being episodic, like like Deep Space Nine hit the perfect mix of being episodic but serialized, and so like there was a lot of heavy, but there was some cotton candy. Like it ended up working out in this perfect mixture, and it made it so that like no motion was really wasted,
even
and
when
it's
they
hard to
had
think of.
the cotton candy episodes in the middle of the war, you never felt like, why are we having this episode where they're doing this, but they're in the middle of a war? Like they set it up in a way that made you feel like, oh, okay, this could have happened, and realistically in real life, if
Yeah,
as if Star Trek was real.
if it was real. Um, Now you've only mentioned the Malon. Do you want me to bring up my one exception to DS9 right now, or do you want to do another
No, go ahead.
character that's kind of
Go ahead.
okay? So my one exception, and I'm going to be interested in your rebuttal on this because you've rewatched DS9 way sooner, so maybe I am missing something here. I felt like the female changeling storyline in particular, and I don't know why I don't feel the same way about Wei-Yun, but I guess we can talk about the Vorta. Um, there
Okay.
was something about her, like it felt like it was so Odo centric, and all that Odo ended up doing was actually just making sweet, sweet love. Um,
In a way.
yeah,
Yeah.
for days apparently in that room, and forgot totally about Kira. Like Odo, come on, man, like you forgot about your girl that holds you down, man. Like whatever. Um, see, girls, I am boyfriend material. Like whatever, but I don't get. I feel like if you plucked her out and there wasn't the female changeling, I don't know what much else changes about DS9. And it's maybe because I'm just forgetting something, but yeah, help me with that because she's on my list, and I'm like maybe she shouldn't be because DS9 was so good, but yeah,
So this one was tough for me. When I saw this, I was like, really? So um the female changeling was the very first changeling that they showed other than Odo. The one that he came in contact with, well, one of the three that he came in contact with when he finally discovered where they lived.
right, the
And
Great Lake or whatever,
yes,
the
but
Great Link.
but I believe that they used her as technically the head or the president or whatnot of the changes when there wasn't necessarily a president or anything. They all made decisions together. But they used her as like the spokesperson or the main individual character that showed the changelings' motives.
Yeah, she was like their Locutus essentially.
Yes,
Like
yes, she was their driver. She was the driver of their motives. So, but I do feel like that she wasn't useless because they used her enough to show like not only could she change Odo's direction and his sense of morality and his feelings that he has for his friends and stuff, because that was also another the episode where you said they were making sweet sweet love and held up in that room for
I
forever.
heard you almost say a word with an F though. What was that?
I did not. I was not going to say another word at all. Uh,
Cat, let me know if you heard just a soft F sound there.
no.
Like,
I did not. I did not. Um, even with that episode, it made you. It did such enough to where one by the time loved the Odo character. So you were just like, Odo, what the hell is going on? Like, dude. And
Right.
then they had this plan to foil the minefield and everything. But then it turns out because Odo was making sweet, sweet love to the changeling, he wasn't in his office to stop the alarm from occurring when Rom was going in to like stop their plan. So now Rom is captured. And so
Hmm.
I feel like she was used the way that she should be or should have been enough to not deem as a useless character. I mean, and then not only
You
that,
know,
when they were cut off, when the Dominion were cut off from the Gamma Quadrant, and she was like one of the only changelings that was in the Alpha Quadrant.
when you've just about turned me around on this because I think you're right. There's an element of scope of what she's supposed to do and be that I think I was pushing her into like the villain category, which she's kind of a villain, but she's like a villain politician.
Yeah,
And I think it's helping
yes,
me.
exactly.
Yeah, and it's helping kind of like me square the Vorta as well, who, after I got to the end of my statement, if you didn't notice, I was almost about to add them to the list. But it's like, yeah, in their roles, they actually pushed the storyline and pushed the protagonist around and made them choices, um, and left all the lethality to the Jem'Hadar at the end of the day. So, and also Deep Space Nine being still my favorite Star Trek series, even though Strange New Worlds is trying to
Yeah.
charge in on that. I'm actually willing to let that go. I'm willing to take her off the list and be like, you know what, she did play a role. It led to characters making decisions even against their character and having to make up for it. And she's ultimately the reason why Odo rejoins the Great Link at the end of the war and ends the
Yeah.
war.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think I can't call her useless. I think I just had forgotten all that she really did and what she was supposed to be doing in there. I don't know where we go from here when we agree with each other. It doesn't make for great radio, but
Well,
that's a good point.
we can just honestly say that they used her in a way that that you had that feeling of they could win. You had that
Yeah, the
feeling
fear was
of
there.
yeah, the fear was definitely there. You had that feeling of she is a menace when she's around. So when you see her, it's just like, oh crap, why is she here? Um, so I
You know,
it uh-huh.
I think you just unleashed why she made my list initially and why I'm going to take her back off. Um, I think subconsciously I was comparing her to Kai Wynn, who I was much more afraid of when she was at the height of her Kai Wynn. Like every time
Yeah.
Kai Wynn showed up, except kind of later in the series when she was just like rolling in the hay with Ducat and things like that. But like when Kai Wynn was allowed to be Kai Wynn, like every time she showed up in an episode, I was like, oh my
Oh my
god.
God, what is she doing? Yeah. Why is she here? Oh no, here we go
Let's
again.
airlock her. I don't care. It's
Yeah.
only been 10 minutes. It violates all the laws, but let's airlock her. Our lives are going to be easier if we do that. You're the emissary. You can airlock a Kai, I'm sure.
You can oh, what? You're the emissary. You can airlock a Kai as a Starfleet
I'm just
officer.
there. You go. This is a matter of Bajoran faith, not Starfleet.
Okay. Okay. In this particular situation, he was acting in Bajoran interests
Yeah.
of
Take the badge
murdering
off.
this high. Oh, I'm sorry, I used the wrong terminology. I'll have to bleep that out. Of unaliving this
Oh wait,
one.
we've said.
Uh huh.
Are we supposed to be saying unalive? Because I definitely have said.
Oh, yeah,
We both have said.
we're supposed to be saying that. Yeah,
Ah, jeez. Okay. You got a lot of bleeping to do.
unfortunately, but this is the issue with us. Uh,
Wanting to talk like adults on the internet. Yeah, I know it's crazy.
how dare we? How dare we?
But yeah, just take the badge off, airlocker, and say it was like a Prophets thing, and then put the badge back on.
Awful.
Kind of like how Worf does sometimes when he's
Awful.
got to go do Klingon stuff.
You're not wrong. Okay, now I do
Yeah.
want to talk about one of mine that I think is going to make for interesting conversation.
Okay.
Thomas Riker.
Okay. Useless antagonist Thomas Riker. I'm honestly going to have to hear you out on this one.
Okay. Okay,
I
you ready?
didn't.
Uh huh.
I'm trying. Yeah, I want to hear you out on this one because my memory of him is being a useful antagonist. But yeah, go ahead and cook.
So, how he was used in TNG when he was first introduced, I felt like he was used in the proper way or the proper manner. He was not necessarily a villain antagonist, but he was an antagonist to Commander Riker, showing a different side of him of what he once was when he was a lieutenant, and then what he would look like if he didn't go through the same experiences that he had gone through up until that point. So he was utilized well in TNG. Where I would call him useless was how they reintroduced him in DS9, where he
Hmm.
became a part of the Maquis. And he was smart in a way and being able to steal the Defiant as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like when the Maquis were over and done with, they could have found a way to had allowed him to have escaped from the Cardassians and
Oh,
be
I see. Okay.
utilized as an antagonist again with the DX9 crew at some point.
Hmm.
That makes
Like I'm
sense.
gonna kind of like another editing.
Yes, yes.
That would have been cool. Um, that does make sense. Also, okay, a side note I gotta say, the one thing that always stands out to me about that episode is that he's playing Commander Riker, Will
Hmm.
Riker, when he goes on, and he sees O'Brien, and he just immediately is like, I can't remember what his line was, but it was immediately like, you know what it is between us, O'Brien.
Yeah,
Get out.
I never
And
understood that.
and O'Brien just got out and didn't question it at all. I'm like, I would have stood there and been like, wait, what? We were playing poker. Like,
I just
like
yeah.
what did I do?
I don't
No, you're talking crazy to me. You gotta tell me what's going on.
even with Thomas Riker, that episode, even thinking about that episode, I was like, did he do something with that episode that like made him pissed off at O'Brien? But like,
No, I got you. What it is that the writers knew that O'Brien could talk to Thomas in a way that like would immediately reveal that it's Thomas. Because there's just stuff that he and Commander Riker went through that like Thomas can't replicate. So they needed to get him out of the way in some way, like very quickly, and they went the route of just being like
lazy
there was some
writing.
sort of yeah, it was lazy writing or just too efficient writing. I don't want to call the DS9 writers lazy, but
Oh
yeah, it's kind
no,
of
no,
lazy
no!
writing.
This is lazy writing.
Yeah, where they just like invented some sort of beef that apparently didn't exist. And Riker and O'Brien just because I can only
Because
imagine like I would have gone back to my like place and like sent a text message and be like, hey man, like I don't remember us having like an issue.
any beef or anything, like yeah,
And then oh man, that would have been such a cool part of the episode if Will Riker responded, be like, yeah, no, we're cool. Why do you think we have an issue? And like the light bulb goes on. Ah, that would have been so much better. I'm not trying to do the DS9 writer's job.
that would have been a much better reveal as well.
Yeah, that would have been like that kind of countdown clock um, kind of thing because like it could happen right as like he's trying to steal the Defiant and like O'Brien's trying to get to the bridge or to the Defiant to keep it from happening. Ah, that would have been awesome. Yeah, one of the few times the DS9 writers dropped the ball. I will agree.
I mean, and okay, let's. The writers are not perfect, and on any show,
Yeah,
even some of
nobody's
the
perfect.
best shows, the writers are
Yeah,
not perfect. There are always going to be some type of loopholes or something you can point out. It's just like that didn't make sense or whatnot. So we can say that is one of the times that the writers kind of like dropped the ball there. But like, I do feel like that he could have made for a much better antagonist later on with like to that same point, like kind of like what Eddington was to Cisco as well.
And I think to one of my points that really speaks to me, I thought the episode was entertaining. I did not think he was going to succeed. Maybe stealing the Defiant was too big of a goal for me to suspend
Yeah,
disbelief.
yeah.
It's like, well, I know they're not going to go without the Defiant, so how are we going to stop Thomas Riker? Like, if it was the actual Commander Riker joining the Maquis, I would have been like, oh no. But they hadn't established Thomas as like a tactical genius, like his, transporter created brother on the show.
Yeah, because they kind of alluded to Commander Riker's what he learned between the time that he was lieutenant to him becoming a commander shaped his strategic background to become like the good strategist that he was. Because he did come up with
Right, exactly.
certain maneuvers and everything that was like, oh man, like the Riker maneuver and all that stuff.
Well, the Riker maneuver, just to say this word again on this particular weekend where everything is fine in the United States, insurrection. I thought the insurrection thing was the Riker maneuver.
Oh, it was. It was.
Oh, okay.
That was the Riker maneuver. Another maneuver where I don't know if this was necessarily on Riker. Riker was just the one that was commanding the ship. You remember when they were doing the exercises, the ship exercises, where Riker had
Oh,
a
yeah.
beat up
Hmm.
ship and he was fighting against the Enterprise, and that
Yeah, and they brought in like a very specific strategist to set up the
yeah,
exercise. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, that warping out thing.
That's the episode that the quote that we end the show comes from.
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
So that's why I say Thomas Riker.
You are not going to get any pushback from me. That was I'm kind of kicking myself for not thinking about it myself. He was good in TNG. His DS9 appearance was really that whole episode was like we want to bring Jonathan Frakes in
Mm-hmm.
to play Riker, but
Mm-hmm.
we want it not to be Riker because if Riker shows up, he's going to be the hero of the episode. So
Oh,
we'll
one
put this
hundred
twist
percent.
in. Yeah,
And he's gonna
and
steal everybody's girl. Everybody's girl. you see, he
was
almost
that feel like?
he almost got Kira. Probably could have got
Mm-hmm.
Dax.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely could have pulled Lita if she was. I don't even know if she was on the series at that time. But
But
I'm
suffice
pretty.
to say, the Dabo girls are there.
Oh, well, could have pulled every Dabo girl in Quarks. Like, actually, now that I'm thinking about it more, Commander Riker was the ish.
Everybody loves Riker. If you don't like Riker, then I don't know. I'll give you my therapist name after I talk to her about all this Star Trek bathing stuff.
Hilarious. So,
But yeah,
what other useless antagonists you want to point out from your list?
God, we got so many that are still here. I'm not quite sure how much longer you want to go, but there's two in particular. One from the show that shall not be named, but it's called Picard. Um,
It
that
shall
I
not be
just want
named,
to,
but I'm gonna go ahead and name it.
yeah. And then there's one that we came up with. There's actually one we came up with right before the show. There's one we came up with during the show that are TNG.
I, and because the Picard series was as terrible as it was, and the writers, I don't know what the writers were thinking when they decided that. You can practically name just about almost every main character on that, and also uh, villains and also antagonists on that were just like pointless and useless. So
Hmm.
I would rather point on the one that we came up with before we started the chat.
I love that line of reasoning. That whole show was so bad that it's honestly not worth talking
It's
about
it's
until
not.
part two.
It's not. It's not. It's gonna be like to the audience. It's gonna be like, oh, a shocker. Oh, you hate
That's true.
you hate an antagonist that was on Star Trek Picard. Oh, that's a shocker.
I agree. I just want to confirm for the audience that in this future episode, when we talk about this again, it is Commodore O, it is Narissa and Narek. The I don't think we can say this on YouTube. The Isis twins, the Targaryen twins from the show. We'll get into that. We'll figure out how to talk about them. Just 2 seconds. I don't know why they wrote them that way, especially someone who has an older sister. I'm like, this is weird. Why are you doing this? Anywho, let's do these two from TNG, like you said, so we don't get off track. I don't know the name of them. Maybe one of us will Google it while we're talking. But the bug thingies at towards the end of season 1.
I have to wholeheartedly agree with this.
And then the one that I just added to the list that you made me think of earlier in the episode, I don't remember her name because obviously I just thought of it. But that episode where that woman's trying to steal a planet and trying to, totally do it with Picard.
Oh, the
she falls
one
in the
that had
Harry Mud
like
bucket.
they thought she was a god, but she was like using
Yeah.
her ship to like
Audra, I think is who she was. Yeah, I think that was her name. But whichever, choose your own adventure. You're the host of the show. Those are the two from TNG that like came up right before or while we were talking. That I'm like, we can talk about them being useless.
Even though Audra is that is an interesting one. I truly want to talk about the bugs from season 1 at the end of season
Let's
1.
do it. Because honestly, that episode led to one of the most horrifying things I have ever seen in any show or movie I've ever seen since, no matter the amount of gore in it. But yeah, go ahead. We'll get to that.
And also, the Memory Alpha only has them as the parasitic beings. So,
wow, they didn't give them a name.
Yeah,
okay,
didn't give them a name.
So
the more I think about this particular part is very interesting, and this is probably where we're going to end our conversation on here. Is this one?
Why?
Go ahead.
Why did they abandon them so quickly? Do you know? Like,
I really think it was their pivot that they did for season 2. The growing of the beard, and then changing people's jobs and stuff, and then like wanting to go a different direction with how they were doing the episodes and stuff. That they just, I think when they did that, they just forgot all about this race that they did to end season 1. It's not, but that's the crazy thing. It wasn't like it was an episode in the middle of season 1. It was the very ending. It was the season finale.
oh no, it wasn't.
For
I make that
season
mistake
1.
all the time too. There's actually another episode after that. I can't remember what episode it was though.
There is?
I'll look it up while you're talking. Yeah.
You sure?
Okay, I'll look it up. You keep going, and
Yeah,
maybe I won't get it.
Yeah, double check that. But okay, so Memory Alpha does have them as the parasitic beings, so they never really named them. And then, but you had it to where they had parasites in some of the highest ranks of Starfleet, and even made it to where the Enterprise came back to Earth from their deep space assignment to practically find out what's going on and kind of like stop this whole craziness that was going on. And
Yeah.
you truly did have a sense that they could probably succeed. Also, it also goes back to one of my favorite Worf.
Yeah, we brought that up in the Warp episode.
Yeah, how they screw Worf. Even that, like, also how they did Riker as well, because even Riker tried to attack this old admiral.
I think we forgot to also talk about the fact that he throws Geordi through a door.
Oh, yes.
He kicks all 3 of those dudes.
and leave it to Beverly Crusher to come out of nowhere with a phaser, which I don't even know why she even has this phaser. Number
Don't know.
one, because she's responding to a medical issue, and it's to my knowledge that she doesn't always have a phaser just on
Hey,
her.
whichever side of us takes that Crusher versus Pulaski court episode, whoever takes Crusher, always make sure you make a point of the fact she keeps that thing on her. She's always ready for it to go down, man. She was like, I gotta cap this dude. She pulled it from like her ankle holster. I always got that thing.
Like she had like one of the small phasers just like
Yeah,
in her
exactly.
sock. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, I just saw Jordy get thrown out of this door. We ain't doing this.
See, they don't know this, but I'm about that life.
So is that why Picard ended up getting with her? This is making a lot of sense now.
Hey, you gotta get you a ride or die, right?
But this old man is just like beating, like you could.
The most athletic, most fightingest people. Well, I guess Jory doesn't get in that many fights, but like seemingly the most fightingest people on the ship.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And it really seemed like that at some point they were going to bring this race back, and they were going to be another big antagonist to. And
Oh,
you know
and
what? I wonder if they had the Ferengi issue. That's what I think.
well, quick side note, because I think I might be able to help out. I am correct. That was not the season finale, even though it made perfect sense for it to be the season finale. The season finale of season 1 was the neutral zone, where they brought the Romulans back in like the very next episode.
Oh.
Yeah, because it alludes. I think that's the episode. There's the 3 people that they find in like the NASA probe, and they bring them back to life. One of them's like a hardcore capitalist. One of them's like a suburban mom, and one of them's like a country star.
Yeah.
And then like the capitalist dude ends up like being able to advise on the negotiations at the end because he just charges up to the bridge because he thinks he's in charge. He's really disgusting. I don't like him. But anyway,
He is, but he did discover what that Romulan was thinking. Like they want something that you have.
yeah,
Like
yeah. I mean,
he did
that's a
point that
line for
out.
Troy, but whatever.
It should have been a line for Troy.
And then yeah, they were like, hey, something's been going on in and we've had to like handle some internal matters, but this like something's been happening to our colonies, and that's made us break to have first contact, and that's how that ends. So I do wonder if maybe they were like, well, we just brought the Romulans back. Do we really need these bugs that we didn't even give a name to? Like, so.
And then not only that, then they introduced the Borg at some point in season 2.
Yeah, which the similarity, I'm glad I get to say this on the internet. The similarity between the parasitic bugs and the Borg are actually kind of interesting because it's like they're both predicated on entering the body and taking over the mind of someone, and seemingly like they did have a hive mind. So part of me has always wondered, I've never heard anyone say if they just didn't turn this into the Borg.
That could be the reason why we didn't see them anymore. Is because they came out with the Borg, and this became like one of the biggest villains for the Federation.
Yeah, but to your point about being useless, though, their disappearance, especially after the end of the episode, where Data goes out of his way to be like, "Well, they sent a message somewhere, and at some point we're gonna have to deal with this."
Yeah, which would suggest that there's a civilization somewhere of these bugs, and
Yeah.
like, why didn't they have another episode or a season finale where they ended up finding a way to take over a starbase or something, and that was going to be their way back into it? I don't know, or something, or find a way to infiltrate the Enterprise, and that become a whole thing. I don't know. I guess, you know what? Did they show Did they show that killing the actual parasite still left the host alive?
Okay, because and we always shout this guy out for beating us to the punch on stuff. Steve Shives actually just did a retro review on that episode like a couple months ago. That's
Uh huh.
maybe why it like popped into my mind. Maybe it was less than a month ago, and he doesn't point it out in there, but I think there's actually like a bit of confusion because it seems like you have to unalive the people to get the bug to leave.
Yeah.
But then when they unalived Remick and like the Queen bug or whatever, then they all just kind of like went away. Like the Admiral that had a bug in him lived, but it doesn't seem like any of the people that Picard and Riker shot
We're still
lived.
alive. Yeah.
Yeah, when the bugs left them. So I am very confused on the lethality of the parasitic bugs.
See, and I wonder if that's why they pivoted to the boar because they had to create a species that could like take over and like just pretty much take away their individuality and use their knowledge and everything to be a menace to the Federation, but also have it to where we can do this to one of the main characters, and we end up stopping them and then reverting them back to being human.
Yeah, yeah, we can get them back, which they left very vague on what you could do.
Yeah,
Also, how disgusting would one of their ships be if you actually had to encounter it? Like,
that's probably another thing. They probably tried to. Uh, okay, what would their ships look like? How would their hierarchy be? And they probably couldn't find a way to do that in a way that would make it um, palatable.
because it would have to be disgusting, right?
It would.
Like, so I watch because my sister watches it. I watch Ants Canada, and he has a series of uh, vivariums where he has like a bunch of bugs and a bunch of creatures in it, and the stuff that is like pure bugs is just poop
Ugh.
and disgusting and just things crawling over each other, and I'm like, if a captain ordered me to go on the ship on an away mission of those things, I'm like, you're gonna have to court martial me. I'm not.
I'm good. I ain't going over there. No.
Here's my badge and here are my pips.
Yeah. You know
This
what?
is not happening.
You know what? I do think it's time for me to retire. I think
Yeah,
I think it is. I think it
like
is about
we've
that
had
time.
we've had a good run. I'm joining the civilian exploring series
Uh-huh.
service, and yeah, I'm not going over there, Captain.
So I do have to honestly say that they were probably the most useless characters created because it could have made for very interesting uh, episodes in the future,
Mm-hmm.
and like to your point about their technology or what their ships look like they could have found a good way of like even you know what, I think the best way to do that type of species would to have been to have it to where like okay there's a queen and then below that queen are like lesser queens like another hierarchy, and that was one of the things that took over that lieutenant commander.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the
Oh man.
queen; it was one of the subordinates of the queen that still had like control of other colonies,
Mm-hmm.
and then even below them had like kind of like their soldiers, their foot soldiers, and they could have made them bigger and more look more like the insectoids from Star Trek Enterprise, or
Oh, that
or
could have worked.
something to that degree. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, they're bipedal. They can build ships. They they do have a way of like traversing the stars and everything, the universe and stuff. So, and then have it to where like below them were those smaller insects that could take over The parasitic insects that could take over the minds and bodies of other bipedal
That would have
beings.
been cool. That would have been cool. Um, Not to pivot too much away from that, but we have to talk about how disgusting that final. I don't want to call it final fight, but final. Whatever they did to Remick was gross. And I
Yeah,
saw that when I was a very little kid
yeah.
to start. And I didn't necessarily get scared, but I do remember being like very put off as a little boy seeing that for the first time. And during that Steve Shives thing, he showed it again. And being a full grown man, I'm still very put off. I'm like, this is
So,
gross. Like, how did they decide to put this on TV? This is awful.
so I find that funny because I was never put off by that. As a grown man,
Oh,
looking at
really?
that now, I'm just like, yeah, this is probably something that I wouldn't have want a kid, or if I had a kid, to have them watch at such a younger age. But granted, like by that time, I had already watched like RoboCop, and RoboCop had that one
Yeah.
scene that was just like very gruesome. Actually, it had multiple scenes, but that one scene where Murphy pretty much got offed, and
Yeah.
not pretty much, he did get offed, and that whole scene was very gruesome. So, in comparison, the RoboCop scene was worse.
But this is network TV,
That's the
prime
only issue.
time.
That's the only issue.
Yeah, like you had to go
Yeah,
see RoboCop. This just happened to us. So,
that was the
but I
only
think you're
issue
right.
and the surprising part of that scene.
Because it didn't seem like that's where this were heading. Like the phasers never did that to anyone before or since,
Hmm.
where you just kind of explode. Like I was like, wow, they really went through, and the fact that they made it practical and like had to like make like, oh god, it's yeah. I don't think this has anything to do with how useless it is. I just want to say it's disgusting.
However, like the practical effects of that scene were
I mean,
great.
well done. The craftsmanship, yes, but if you went to a Star Trek convention or something that lets you tour and see props and stuff from the series, and they had that there, you would still
Yeah.
be like, that is disturbing. Like, I'm
Yes.
surprised y'all made that. Did you go to church after making that? We need to pray for you.
Well, unless you want to talk about another one, I think we can stop the episode at that one.
Yeah, we still, I'm looking, your honorable mentions are, we got some good ones, so we're going to have to come back. Oh, Star Trek Nemesis. Yeah, we're going to have to
Yeah,
come
because
back to this topic.
we could talk about honorable mentions like how useless, how TNG did the Ferengi. Like they were supposed to be a strong villain antagonist for the Enterprise, the crew of the Enterprise, and then they just pivoted hard on that because it they were more of a gag villain than anything.
Yeah. But you've got about seven, eight, probably like another 12 more on here that we can talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and note which ones we, or just cross through which ones we discussed. And yeah,
Hmm.
I think we can give folks a break. We probably have gone about a couple hours already.
Well, I guess we're gonna end it right there. Like I said, we have other good episodes that planned for the rest of this month. Next week, seeing as how Father's Day is coming up, we're going to talk about fathers in Star Trek. Seeing as how we touched on mothers in Star Trek.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry.
Uh huh.
We got to do one more. I know that's a surprise. There's one more we got to do because it was when you mentioned before the show that you don't remember who it was.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we got to take like 5 minutes to do this.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry for the fake out. You didn't remember who Armis was. Armis is the black ooze monster that unalived Yar.
Oh, that is his name. Okay.
Yeah, and they make fun of him on Lower Decks, which is kind of why I know his name. And I thought I was being controversial with putting him on there because they unalived Yar. But I remember that episode of basically it's just the episode where Yar gets unalived.
Yeah, and I'm conflicted there because that character was only created for the simple purpose of killing Yar.
Yeah, which makes him. I, which this is where I get conflicted with it, and I'm glad we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna take just a few minutes to do this. Like when you're a villain, you're supposed to unalive some of the folks sometimes. So when you're
Yeah, because
designed to
it
be that
raises the
lethal,
stakes.
yeah. So when you're designed to be that lethal and you act lethally, like I'm not really impressed as you as a useful person. And then the rest of the characters around her like grieved her, right?
Mm-hmm.
But everything else that happens in the series doesn't until she comes back as Sela doesn't really, which is even like its own like weird thing that has nothing to do with Armus. Like
Well, but
like he
we know the inner workings as to why Denise Crosby was exiting the cast
right.
of TNG. So I really think that that was a pivot episode. Like she's leaving. We didn't have an episode where we were going to off one of the characters, nor were we going to focus on some black ooze character. So because she was leaving, the writers just like sat down. It's just like, okay, how can we send off this character? Like, what would be the correct way to send off this character?
By having a pool of oil backhand her out of existence.
Well, but like, okay, to their credit, I believe that it was the right send off. Here's why: because her
Okay.
character was supposed to be the strong female type character. Uh,
Where
always
is this going?
always like willing to get into harm's way to help her comrades, her friends. Like she was always willing to fight. And I felt like if she had died in any other way other than in battle, then it would have been wrong for her character. Like if she had just died in some shuttle accident, I felt like it would have been pretty hollow.
So I like that. I do think okay, maybe this is looking at it with modern eyes
Uh huh.
because I watched some of the CW DC stuff, Arrow and Flash, and when they did that with a character, like their moment to go out, they went out like a G, like swinging,
Uh huh.
fighting, getting overwhelmed and things like that. Armus just kind of like I don't think he like even makes contact with her. Like he just like
Yeah, it's like some like he just waved
yeah,
his hand like a Doctor Strange evil character or something.
yeah, exactly. And then she's just gone
Yeah,
forever.
yeah.
Well, almost forever. And
Technically
so that's
forever.
where
Technically.
and that's where I kind of struggle with it because I would have liked to see her go out in it, and it, like okay, when we do the racism episode, we'll talk about the African planet that they went to. But in a fight like that, with someone who is like equally skilled and just gets the better of her,
That would be my only
and
critique with that. I would agree with that.
yeah, but her just getting like inventing a ooze monster to harass Troy and then unalive the other strong woman character, one of the other strong woman characters on the show, just is like, I'm like, you know what? They should have just bombarded the planet with photon torpedoes. They left the little buoy that was like, don't come to this point. They set it up so that you never get to see him again. So I don't even know how menacing he actually
Well, and that's
is.
and that's why I say that he's not useless because of how they wrapped everything up. They made it to where no one should go back to that planet. They didn't want to just like straight torpedo him to death because that goes against everything that the Federation stands for, with like killing a being, regardless of what they did to you. Unless it's like a self defense type thing that you ended up winding up killing said being.
He unalived Yar.
Yeah, but they could. Yeah, but they couldn't kill him with their phasers or hand to hand combat or anything. So like they probably could have with a with a torpedo, yes, But they had no reason at the point at the end because they had already got everybody off the planet. So he was not a
I see what
threat
you're saying. It's
anymore.
not really like a act of war
Yeah.
kind of thing. I agree. I'm in swift agreement with that because I'm anti-war crime, as you know. Ooh, another episode idea: the war crimes. Oh, no, we should probably never do that episode. We'll talk offline about it.
Yeah, probably not. But however, there is an episode that I did come up with from this from us talking about this is like we can talk about areas where we feel like the writers kind of screwed up.
Yeah, because we found a surprising one in
Yeah.
DS9. That Thomas Riker episode would be a little bit different. I think if they did a couple more takes on it. But to get back to Armis, outside of unaliving Yar, which I think were, ooh, is she back?
Yeah, my wife just came home. That's all.
Okay. Outside of unaliving Yar, which could have been assigned to a Klingon, to a Romulan, or maybe not a Klingon in that era, but a Romulan or some other kind of high stakes kind of thing that might have been a little bit more entertaining if they weren't just trying to get her off the show as fast as possible. Armis does nothing to anyone else, and no one is that different outside of their sad about Yar, which happens to a lot of officers on the ship. So I'm kind of like, this dude is useless. Like, he's on this planet by himself. If our shuttle hadn't crashed there, we would have never have known that he was
Well,
there. Like, I don't know.
well, he does fit our definition. I will agree with that fact. He does fit our definition of being a useless antagonist. I just feel like there would have been no point in bringing him back up in another episode or using him again because of how they wrapped up the episode.
The only way you do it is if it ends up there's something very important on the planet that you have to go get
Yeah.
to achieve something else, which is very serialized, very much something that would happen to Discovery. I'm kind of surprised Discovery didn't do it.
Well, they got cut off in season 5. By season 7, season 6 could have been about them going back to this planet and seeing Artemis again. That I could.
They had to go. They found the Guardian of Forever in their travels. So.
That was another one of my issues with Discovery. Now that see, the more and more we have these conversations about the unusual and crazy things that happen in Star Trek, the more and more it makes me realize why Discovery was not a great rendition of Star Trek. Like,
Whew.
and I'm saying this to the fact, like, and I'm not saying like they are the worst Star Trek series. I am not saying that at all. Not at all.
Right.
Picard definitely has that vote for me. I'm like 100%. Regardless of how great season 3 was, Picard definitely has that vote for me.
I mean, 2/3 of it was terrible. So
2/3 was awful. But like I said, I can see where some fans do not like Discovery and why they don't like it. I can truly see, I truly understand that.
that said, you still know it's canon. You don't debate
It's still,
that.
yeah,
So.
it's still canon. Regardless, like as much as I hate Picard, Picard is still canon. It's still a part of the Star Trek universe. As much, I would be happy if they wiped it out.
I mean, it's begging for a retcon, but yeah.
It's definitely begging. It is wholeheartedly begging for a retcon. But like I said, I understand. I truly do. I truly understand why people feel this way outside of the people who are being racist, sexist, feminist, all that stuff. Like outside of
Misogynist, you mean.
misogynist is what I meant to say. Like I just I think what made me feel this way was like going back and rewatching some. No, this last season of Discovery, watching that, and then going back and watching TNG, and then understanding the pacing and how they wrote the episodes and stuff.
Yeah.
It is definitely different, and I
It's
feel like
definitely different.
I feel like Strange New Worlds did a great job of embodying TNG, but also putting in certain elements of the new Trek, like the some of the action that they like to do, they I feel like they do a good job of putting that in there than what Discovery did.
Yeah,
And
yeah. No, I agree.
I'm not completely upset now that Discovery ended. It did what it
No,
needed
I
to
think
do. It
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 did what it needed to do.
it started
And I
back
had
up
a,
the Star Trek as a whole. We got Strange New Worlds out of it. It did what it needed to do, and it's over and
and
done
I
with.
still enjoyed it. Like even though it was high stakes every week, like I still had a good time with it. But where does that leave us with Armus? Because we've come to consensus on like almost everyone on this list. Is this the one that's gonna?
I I, I agree to disagree with Armis. That's
Okay,
that's where
okay.
I'm at. It's like on one end he fits our definition, but because how they wrapped him up, I cannot say that he was not used
Yeah,
properly or should come back for another episode.
because you put a little bit more value on how they're used repeatedly and things like that. And since they cut that off, there's no need to ding him as a useless antagonist because there was nowhere else for him to go except for
Exactly.
his brief appearance where he got clowned on lower decks.
Exactly. And he was such a dumb character anyways. And I'm saying dumb like he was not intelligent. He was not intelligent enough.
He was just there to unalive Yar. That was
Exactly.
his only purpose.
So I don't see him coming up with a plan to get off the planet to find the Enterprise and then like make up some plan to like get back at them for what they did to him. Like I don't see any of that. It would have literally them having to have gone back to that planet for some reason, which I don't see happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, you'd have to put something, some mineral or something on the planet that you have to get to save something else or something like that. Or the planet has to have strategic value and
Yeah,
some conflict with a future enemy that you have to establish a presence on, so you have to deal with him again. Like you have to kind of contrive the situation to get back to him. He for the fact that we're about to end the episode, I think we've ended the episode the right way to talk about him because he does split right down the middle given the limited scope
yeah,
he was supposed to have, but also fits the definition of, yeah,
useless.
he's right on the line. He's right on the line.
And that's going to make us reevaluate, especially when we rewatch TOS. That's going to make us reevaluate our list for part two. And well, I mean, we might have a different feeling about it after the fact.
Yeah. When we rewatch Shore Leave,
I'm skipping that episode unless I found some way to be on some psychedelic, which I don't do. Uh, I'll probably need to drink
yeah.
a lot
Well,
before watching that
that's the only
again.
way. That's the only way either of us can re-endure that episode is because we were both sober when we watched it. So the
Yeah,
only way to make our conversation about it more interesting is to watch it drunk and
just
see if
watch it. Yeah.
see if it makes more sense.
But I appreciate everybody for coming. We're going to stop this right here. Like I said, well, like I was saying before, next week's episode, seeing as how Father's Day is coming up, we're going to talk about fathers in Star Trek. That's one of the things that we wanted to touch on, which is a little bit serious, but still lighthearted. So it's not going into our full serious episode. That would be the one right after that, which I'm not gonna tell y'all what the title of that episode. I'm gonna leave that as ambiguous.
I
But
already
no,
kind of mentioned it, but
they don't know that. Anywho,
oh, sorry.
anywho, we're gonna end this episode as we do always with that wonderful, famous quote from Jean-Luc Picard.
It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. There are four lights!
That was a happy accident at the end. YouTube decided to go to the next clip, which was that one.
I demand a better system. That first quote stands on its own, fine enough. When you edit this episode, do not keep that in.
I'm leaving that in there. I'm leaving that in there. Y'all have a wonderful week. Join us next Sunday for Strange Track. Have a great one.